You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this week's episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And I am welcoming back my good buddy, Meg Kennedy. She and I worked together in a dental practice down here in Victoria for many years together. And she's been instrumental in part of my leadership and management journey development. And we'll be forever grateful to her. You may have heard Meg speak with me on one of our previous episodes about micromanagement. She was my victim of my bad micromanaging ways. And so if you haven't listened to that episode, I do encourage you to go back and have a little listen to that one. But today, Meg thought it would be a great idea to talk about a specific topic. And I think it's a great idea too, because this happens in a lot of practices where the owners of the practice are in some way related. Maybe they are husband and wife, maybe they're even siblings. And I think this topic is a super one. Welcome back to the program, Meg.
Hi, Julie. How are you going?
Really good. What made you come up with this topic?
So I had a couple of experiences. I've had a few in the past, as you know, and recently with that micromanagement team that I worked in, they were actually a brother and sister. And probably the last practice that I worked in before I had my car accident, they were husband and wife, and I've worked in many. And before that, there was an uncle and his niece working together. And then you and I also worked with a husband and wife team in Melbourne. So, yeah, I've experienced it many times, good and bad experiences. And also I had one before I went to Sydney as well. They were a husband and wife team as well. They were quite amazing working together. So, yeah, what about yourself?
Oh, you've had plenty of experience compared to me, I think. Let me have a think. So, yes, there was certainly the husband and wife team that we worked with together. I'm working, one of my clients now, there are two sisters that are working together. And I know of course, just with various clients, a lot of husband and wife teams where one of them is the dentist and the other one is the practice manager in majority of cases, rather than having both be the dentist owners. So over your experience, Meg, what have been some of the negative stories that you could possibly, without naming names, let us know about? What are the pitfalls of working together?
I actually had someone approach me for some coaching recently, and that was a husband and wife team. The wife was the dentist and the husband was the practice manager. Their whole team had walked out. So the practice manager had actually taken the whole team and gone and set up another practice because they weren't happy with how they were being treated by the husband, who was actually the practice manager. And the dentist, who was the female, didn't know really that any of this was going on. So she lost her whole team and is now having to rebuild. The one where it was an uncle and his niece, he was really aggressive. And basically what I found happens is that the team actually feel like they have nowhere to go when it's someone who's a relative that's working as the practice manager. They feel like they're a bit stuck. They can't voice their opinions. They have nowhere to go complaint-wise. And they can be really mistreated by that practice manager and basically end up leaving. And so you lose really, really good team members because they just don't want to be treated badly. So that's been my experience, and I've experienced it where I've actually left because of a husband and wife team on a number of occasions, or because of, you know, a relative within the practice. I think I mentioned that last practice that I worked for here, she was actually a micromanager and quite aggressive in her approach, and in the end I ended up leaving from that. I actually spoke my truth with that practice and let her know exactly what was going on, because I had nothing to lose at that point. But when I was younger, I probably would have just left and not said anything.
You've pointed out some of, I think, the classic problems that do or can arise when family members, we'll just call them all family members, whether husband and wife or sisters or aunties and uncles, that when family members do have a management superior position to the other people that are working within the dental practice. And so one of the ones is that kind of came to my mind as you were explaining that was, how safe do you feel as a team member if you've got a complaint about the other person, the other owner, for example? So let's just, for ease sake, let's just say we've got Sally and Mark working at the same place. Sally and Mark might be siblings, they might be auntie and uncle, they might be uncle and niece, they might be husband and wife. So team members, if a team member was unhappy with Mark, how safe is it? How confidential will the conversation be if I go to Sally and speak to her about the issues that I've got or the concerns that I've got about Mark? And I think that's one of the issues, is that you always assume that the husband and wife or the family members will actually be very frank and open with each other and disregard the need for confidentiality amongst other team members.
Absolutely, that is one of the things. The other thing, the other problem that might come up is basically how much do you want this to affect your personal relationship with that relative? That's the big thing that you need to have a think about if you're a practice owner, because one, you could lose your marriage. Two, you could fall out with a family member or another type of relative. So it's something that you really, really need to think about, because it affects everyone. The dentist that approached me recently, her marriage was actually falling apart. And I thought that was really quite sad, because she hadn't dealt with it. She'd put her head in the sand and basically put her head into her work and just gone, this will sort itself out. And in the end, she lost the whole team. And now she's about to lose her marriage as well. So I think you really have to think about, when you're going into these dynamics, you really have to think about, what's at stake? What could you lose from this? And you want your business, but you also want your partner or your family member. So perhaps it might be a really good idea to either separate them or create some really good constraints around everyone, some systems in place so that everyone feels safe, I think.
I think so too. So let's go through a couple of other things I've just noted down here as the drawbacks, and then we can start talking about how to structure the relationship and the place that you hold within the dental practice in order to try to avoid these sort of pitfalls from happening. Another one that I've got written down here is that when you've got a husband and wife or siblings on one side, the employees might find them so unified in their space that if they were to open up and be a bit frank or honest about a tender, sensitive issue, they've now, instead of just having one owner say to them, no, that's not the way things are supposed to be, or disagree with them in essence, they've got two against them, and they may feel a little bit of a bullying up on them and so that stops that kind of frank and open communication that's required within an effective functional team as well.
The staff member can feel really intimidated by that, and if it's not dealt with properly, they might actually take it more inwards, and you'll lose the staff member that way as well. So you have to be really open and honest and frank with each other, and also deal with every situation that comes up. If there's a complaint, make sure that you deal with it, and that it's dealt with fairly and not taking sides with the family member or the staff member. It needs to be dealt with in the right way. So,
also, what if that husband and wife or siblings, what if they just naturally don't get along and they start fighting inside the walls of the practice? I think that is a big risk, and I can see that happening too. They're dragging the fight from this morning into the workplace for the day.
That was the two relatives, and basically they took on where they were really yelling at each other. And there's a point where there's a lack of respect. It's almost like familiarity breeds contempt. And when staff see that, that's not a good example for staff to see. It's also not great between the two relatives that are working together, the two family members, because there'll be a lack of respect, and it also can really be intimidating for the staff to see people, being so real and so volatile. That I don't think that's such a great idea either. And then they start thinking, well, could that be me? That's going to come out, that anger is going to come out at me. And that could make you leave too.
Oh, for sure. That's that feels unsafe. Even you just describing that makes it feel like an unsafe space to be. And as you say, a little bit volatile. So that, you don't have any control over that as an employee. You're really at the mercy of these people. And it's just so crucial that regardless of what's going on for you in all of your outside private world, you still are needing to lead by example. People are still looking to you as to what is the acceptable behaviour here.
No, not at all. So I think it's very important to hold a line and to have that respect for each other and not allow familiarity to breed contempt if it's family members, that's for sure.
The other one I had noted down was when the married couple or the family members are so tight, they just can't see that the other person's got any faults, and so they are constantly excusing possibly unhelpful behaviours in the other person. And again, that just inhibits the communication. We won't bother complaining to Sally about Mark because Sally thinks the sun shines out of Mark's backside.
And that is so true.
So I think there are certainly drawbacks that can roll out if you're not careful and if you don't take steps as a family member to make sure that these sort of things don't happen and don't create a specific type of culture that's quite unhelpful in the management of any team and any business as well. What you said earlier was important, and I wanted to come back to it, that understand what's at stake here. Sometimes there's a marriage at stake, sometimes there's a family relationship at stake. And if things aren't managed really well, then this is the sort of thing, this is the kind of interaction that you're going to have to try to contend with day after day. You're showing up to work with each other every single day, and you'll be actually interacting in a way with each other that's detrimental to your relationship. And in essence, then you're choosing the business over the relationship.
Yeah, very true. The other point to note is that sometimes those that couple or that family member that they've got, there might be an issue going on at home with children or actually within their marriage or family life in some way that they actually bring into the practice. And, like you and I have been in practices where they always say, leave everything at the door. You as the practice owner or the business owner, you need to be doing exactly the same thing. You need to be setting an example. You can't bring your fight from breakfast to your morning meeting or your whole day. That's just not going to work for you or your team or your clients either. That's really important to leave all of that at home. So, and that's where the line gets blurred. And I think you and I spoke about the golden line as well, didn't we, earlier in the week, which was pretty, I'd forgotten about that. So, the golden line.
This was a lovely way of defining your roles within the business. This is a husband and wife team that both Meg and I know, and we haven't worked for this husband and wife team, but one of them was the practice manager. She was the practice manager and he was the dentist. And at one point I was having a conversation and he said, "You're stepping over the gold line." He said this to his wife, "You're stepping over the gold line." And I said, "What's the gold line?" And he said, "You know how in an old traditional dental practice there's kind of lino and then there's a gold strip at the doorway from the surgery into the hallway, and then the hallway is carpeted, for example. That gold strip," he said, "everything on this side of the gold strip is me. It's all the clinical stuff, all the clinical decision-making and everything around that. And then on the other side of the gold line, that's the practice stuff. That's her stuff. We do not cross over that gold line. We remind ourselves," and I think that's helpful, have a funny little way of reminding each other, you're stepping over the line. Like, keep to your own bits. And I think that's one of the classic things that we do need to do. It seems a little bit obvious, but I think it's worth stating out loud that Identify what areas of the business you'll be focusing on and then leave it up to that person to do it really well. They're the one that's going to be doing a little bit further contemplation and research and thought around that space, but allow that person to have that full authority.
The dentist should have full authority within the surgery, and it shouldn't come down to whatever admin is doing. That's completely different to what he's doing. He's got the client in mind, and you've got something else in mind, and that's how it should stay. So, yeah, I think it's important.
One of the first practices that I worked at, there was one main partner, but then there were, I think, 3 or 4 other partners as well. And the main partner ran the place, from my perspective as an employee, magnificently. And this is something to be mindful of as well. So in that practice, they were all partners. And so who do you go to if you've got an issue, if you've got a concern, if you've got a question to raise? And it was very simple in that practice because one of the main partners was involved, their whole thing was rostering. The other one, their whole thing was stock ordering. The other one, their whole thing was operations and systems. So as an employee, you always knew very clearly, who do I go to for whatever particular issue? And you know that person's going to be there to be able to listen to you and provide answers and solutions for you as well. And that's a wonderful thing for an employee because, again, I've seen practices where they do have the family members and it's not quite sure, it's really not designated clearly enough which one do I go to for this particular problem.
That's part of the solution, basically, is to have things defined within the practice. One of the other things in that would be to really clarify between the two people who are related what your culture is within your practice and what you expect, what your values are within that practice, what your mission statement is, what your ethics and your morals are as far as dealing with your team, because you need to be on the same page. If they're dealing with your staff in a way that you wouldn't want them to be dealt with, I think that's going to cause a lot of infighting between the two of you and cause issues with your staff. If you've hired your staff under this culture, ethics, morals, and values, and then it's changed because you brought a family member in, that's not going to work. So you need to be very, very clear in that, and you need to have, stipulated that with that relative so that they are functioning along the same lines that you would want your practice to be functioning in.
You're absolutely right. So to go to an extreme example, if a practice had their primary value or primary driver as we need to make sure that we are financially viable and we will not be putting any system in place that takes away from that, then when we talk about, for example, patients not turning up to their appointment times, the system could very well end up with a solution of, and therefore we're going to charge any client that doesn't turn up to their appointment time, we're going to charge them what we would normally charge them had they turned up to that appointment time. That's what makes us viable, or helps make us viable. However, and then we go to the other end of the spectrum where the other owner might have as their driver, as one of their values, the patient relationship. And so being so brash about charging that broken appointment fee wouldn't necessarily be the result or the solution that owner would provide for the problem as well. So you're right, we need to have an agreement. What is going to drive decision-making, our systems, the kind of team members that we employ, the way we train up our team members, the kind of experience we're going to deliver to the patients. We need to be unified with the foundational thought behind that in order to move forward without any resistance.
The other thing that I was thinking about was that the person who's actually managing the practice, they need to know a lot about a growth mindset. They need to know something about psychology and human behaviour as well, because that's your main function, is to know how people function and why they're performing in a way, why they have that attitude, so that you can actually deal with it. If you're bringing in someone who's a family member who doesn't have that experience, who also hasn't dealt with a lot of people and has an understanding of that, they're not going to do a very good job, and they're not going to be very understanding of your team. We all react to things differently. We all react from different aspects. We react from our traumas that we've had in the past. We react from, issues that we might be having within our own family, at home, financial circumstances. That manager needs to understand all of the key components of each of their staff members and why they react or act up from that aspect, because people's bad behaviour comes from all of that, and so they need to be really aware of it. So if you're just bringing in a family member because you're wanting to fill a spot and you're wanting to get them to earn some money, that's not going to work. You need to look at the bigger picture, where what skill set is this person actually bringing into my practice. It's not just about filling a seat for a role.
Hooray, Meggie, that's absolutely true. And I think that's it. It's the decision comes from, one of the examples that are coming to mind is that it's a brand new practice starting up from scratch, and you don't have the funds to employ a receptionist and practice manager and everything straight away. And so you've got the spouse or the sibling saying, saying, I'll come on board and I'll help, and I won't charge anything at the start. It says coming in as family income, it's all good. But have they got the characteristics and the skill set to be able to fulfill that position properly? And if they don't, that's okay. We can learn these things. We can't teach attitude, but we can teach skills. And so make sure that there is an intention of that person coming in and actually upskilling themselves so they're adequately trained in order to do that role well.
We all need to understand mental health. Everyone on our team has been affected, including the dentist and the practice manager. So we need to know about that, and we need to know how to actually move through that and how to help our team move through it as well. Everyone's been affected on some level. So those are skills that can be taught, but you have to have a manager and an owner who are willing to actually learn these things.
One of the things I do suggest, if you are a married couple or family related by blood and you're going to be working together, one of the things I really do suggest you do is seek out others. For example, if it's a married couple, seek out other married couples who are working together and jump online, have a Zoom session, or if you're allowed to, if you're not living in Victoria, maybe have a coffee together. And ask them, what are the challenges? What are your solutions that you developed to date around those sort of challenges? What should we be aware of? What, if you had your time over again, how would you structure it from the start? And start asking people in the know from experience what their experience has been and what you can learn from them.
It'd be really good to set clear boundaries for the staff members and also for the family member, so that everyone understands where they stand within the practice and where to go if there's a complaint. I think that if there is a complaint, that you need to take it quite seriously. And if there are a number of complaints, you really need to take it even more seriously and start looking at what a solution is. I would also set up some sort of a complaint form. That would be one of the things that I would be looking at, so that they can actually write it down, so that you can keep a track of, how many times there has been a complaint about this situation, and then maybe you have to address it with that family member. But you should be addressing it at the first hurdle. Take things seriously, listen to the person, keep things in confidence as well. Don't go to the family member and let them know what's going on. Deal with it in a way where the staff member feels that they can be seen and heard without judgment as well. Ensure that there's regular meetings within the practice, whether that be a weekly or a monthly meeting where everyone gets to sit down and have a chat about what the issues are. And morning huddles, I think those are really good things to, have, how did everyone's day go yesterday? What were the good things? What were the bad things? What could we do better? Those things are really helpful. And in those, maybe you can adjust some things that are going wrong in those types of things. Make sure that everyone understands what delegation they have to them, and that you keep a record of delegation that you've done for the practice manager and your staff members, so that the lines don't get blurred and there's no you should have done this or it was her job to do that. Follow up with people. If they actually have made a complaint, make sure that you go back and you have a chat with them and tell them this is the solution that we are now going to put into place, and explain that you have actually dealt with it. Don't just leave people high and dry where they don't know what to do or what is being done. Oh, and also to have it very clear in contracts with the practice manager, whether it be a relative or another manager. You know, you need to protect your team. No practice manager should be able to take your whole team out of a practice. It should be in the contract to actually protect you so that, you know, within 12 months they can't engage any of your team. I think that's really important, that a lot of dentists actually miss, and they end up losing all of their staff. So, yeah, I think that's important.
I think that is a key point, because we do go into these kind of arrangements like we go into marriage. Everything's going to be perfect. We love each other. 10 years down the track, oh my God, this is torture. And so do recognise the fact that we have got rose-coloured glasses on when we establish the parameters of working together, and getting an outside third party, you know, get a lawyer involved. So go and have a sit down with a lawyer and say, you know, what have you seen happen in the past? We want to make sure that we have some kind of agreement moving forward into this, recognising that should everything turn bad and we end up quite sour towards each other, this contract will then help us, rather than having no contract there at all and just being at the mercy of each other when we're trying to damage each other. So do get a process established from the very start, recognising that things may become challenging and, as I say, sour over time. Get something on paper that will actually end up protecting the business itself and the operations of the business itself, and it will function well regardless of what's actually happened, if there's been any breakdown of your relationship.
We all go into things with rose-coloured glasses. I think the other thing would be to recognise the real traits of that relative. You know, if they're a bit of a white liar at home, there might be a white liar in the workplace as well. You know, the lines could get blurred. Or if they're a blatant liar, they might do that as well. And if they tend to blame other people, they could blame their staff. So, you know, be realistic about the person that you've got in that role. Don't go in with rose-coloured glasses as far as that goes. And the same with a normal manager as well, you know, like someone that you've hired. Be mindful of their traits. Ask them, what personal growth have you actually done? You know, what have you done to actually improve yourself, so that you can see the good and the bad within yourself, and you know where you fall down and what you actually need to repair. I think those things are really important, because if we just continue and allow a person to continue with habits that they have outside of the workplace that they've had at home, it's going to end up very messy. So I think it's important to be really clear on that. Don't think that someone's going to act differently within the workplace than they have done at home, because those traits will come out in the workplace.
Evidence of past behaviour is evidence of what is likely going to happen in the future. I think that it's important because there are different dynamics within relationships. Sometimes there is an equal respect and you give each other as much voice as each other as you want yourself, and it's quite fair. In other relationships, one person could be a bit more intimidating or intimidated by the other, and ends up the person that is feeling intimidated feels that their voice is being smothered, or they see something that's of real concern that never gets aired because they don't feel like they ever get the stage in a strong enough way to be able to voice it. I think it's a good idea for, no matter how well you're getting along, to start a process of every quarter or every 6 months, have a regular meeting with a moderator, a third party. Maybe it's just a sit down with your accountant or your lawyer or somebody that's not involved with you guys emotionally. So you can just have a chat about where the business is going. Are we all happy with the systems and the people that we're hiring and what's going on and And because what that moderator will do is make sure that both have equal opportunity to have input about what's going on. And that can be where the if there are any niggly things going on, they can be raised in that space. And, this sort of job can't be left up to a parent. The parent's emotionally attached to everybody. So when I say third party, I do mean, an intelligent professional person. It doesn't have to be in the dental game, but an intelligent professional person who can come in and just facilitate helpful discussion.
Or someone like yourself who's outside of the actual business. I think that would be really, really good, just to assess where they want to go. And like you're saying, if someone's voice is being smothered, that causes disease. And disease is basically stress, anxiety, all of those sorts of things. So, that's just going to add to a very, very stressful workplace, and your team are going to feel that, as is your practice manager or the dentist or even your clients, And I think that one of the biggest things to remember is that our team and our practice managers are our first customers. So however we treat them, our patients and clients are actually going to feel all of that. So it's important that everyone feels seen and heard, including the dentist. They need to be able to voice their opinion. If they're not being listened to by a practice manager, or a practice manager isn't being listened to, either party needs to come up and allow those people to speak. And I think a mediation of some sort would be really good for people to get out what they might not be saying. And I know dentists spend a lot of time, in the surgery, and then they whisk off home as soon as they're finished, and there's no real communication with managers and with the dentist. So that's really important. It's really important to have a really tight team between the manager and the dentist. So that the rest of the practice functions really well.
And I think that you don't want to sabotage your own journey. You don't want to sabotage your own investment and the viability of your business. And because of the fact, when there is a unity between two key people, the owners, then you may not be aware that there are team members that are feeling quite uncomfortable, or things aren't operating as well as they could be, just because of the structure of the situation doesn't allow that information to come out. And whenever you are a leader or a manager of people, it is just so crucial that you are opening the door up to be receiving feedback around the areas that you're just not aware about. And it brings to mind the Johari Window. Have you heard about the Johari Window?
I've heard of it a long time ago.
So it was developed by two psychologists. I think they were psychologists. One was Joe and the other one was Harry, hence Johari Window. Maybe it's called the Johari Window, but it's only got the one R there. So I'm thinking it's Johari. But what the Johari Window is, it is just such a beautiful way of making sure you develop yourself personally in order to be of better service to the people around you. So the Johari Window has 4 windows. One of them is, it's all the information I know about myself and that everybody else knows about me as well. Another window is all the information I know about myself, but I hide it from anybody else. That's the hidden window. And then there's another window of all the information I have no idea about myself, and all the information that you have no idea about me either, all the very deep subconscious stuff that goes on. But then the last window is the one that is truly helpful. The information I don't know about myself, but you know about me. That's where self-development comes from. And I think the minute you step into leadership or management, and even more crucially, when you have got this combined, unified team running the dental practice, you may not be aware of how you may be sabotaging that relationship, may be sabotaging the viability of the practice and the happiness of the team. So do put yourself in that vulnerable space and ask your team members to be frank with you about how you are as a manager and as an owner, and what can be done to improve the situation.
Absolutely. One of the things I was thinking while you were saying that was you could set up some type of a review, for the manager, done by all of the team individually. I think that could be quite powerful in creating some change within your practice, for sure. So. And within that person as well, we don't, like you're saying, we don't see those things that other people see. that can be running the show within our own lives or within, how we treat other people. So it's very important, that somehow we find that out. And even if it's someone else that points it out, and yes, it can be tough to listen to all of that, but as a manager, I'm really sorry to say that you do have to be open to listening and you have to be open to growth and change. It's really important.
Yeah, and you were my first example of me realising something about myself, something in that Johari window that I wasn't aware of myself, and I needed to hear the brutal truth, and you delivered it so thoughtfully and generously, so thank you for that. But it does get easier as it goes, and I think that was a lovely example for me. It's worth it. It's worth the discomfort of hearing about something that's not so great about yourself, an area of potential growth. It's the discomfort around that. It's so worth moving through that because the lessons I learned were enormous and I've carried with me and I will continue to carry with me for the rest of my life. And my experience has been when I have been really open with my team members, especially when I owned my practice, how am I going? Am I leading you well? Are there any areas that I could improve upon? It gets better, easier and easier as time goes on. When you're coming into an interaction from a space of vulnerability, the other person, I have never experienced them take advantage of that. They are empathetic to the space that I'm holding, and so they're more thoughtful with the way that they are providing me feedback.
I also don't know if you remember, but I know when I was younger, like when I was in my 20s, and we were going through the stages of different sections of being within a dental practice. I remember not taking responsibility for a lot of things and going, that wasn't me, that was such and such. And then stepping into being a manager, and you can't do that anymore. You have to face yourself and you have to take responsibility, and you can't blame anyone for anything, because it's your job to take responsibility, and you have to. But if we can go through things as we grow through dental practices and the different stages that we're in, and realise even as a dental nurse, we need to take responsibility for our own actions and for what we say as well, and how we treat other people. Those things are really, really important. You're never ever going to get away with what you think you're going to get away with. It does come out somewhere in the wash.
I mean, that whole lesson around responsibility is massive. And again, what you said then, the minute you step into a management role, you really do need to claim that sense of responsibility. And no matter what is going on, if, this team member's not working properly, not turning up on time all the time, their performance is low, or the patients that are coming through and they're always turning up late to their appointment times, it's all their fault, their responsibility for not turning up on time. We do need to look at the situation, every single situation, and saying, what could I have done to create a better environment for the right thing to actually occur? And there's always more stuff that we could do as managers to create the better environment.
Absolutely. And that's a really important question. How can I make this better? How can I show up better? What do I need to change to make this a better situation, or what systems do I need to change to make this better?
What are your thoughts around a husband and wife team, for example, who actually live together as well, and their owners, talking about the business side of things when they get home? I'm a little bit of two minds. I think, do whatever ends up working for you.
Well, I think that is a really big thing that does happen, because that's their main focus. It also becomes everything revolves around that. I think you have to switch off. I think you have to put on different hats, and you have to make that as a real decision. When you walk into the practice, you leave everything at home. You almost have to compartmentalize, and you leave home at home. When you walk back into the home, you have to say, okay, that's the end of that day. We're now home, we're now husband and wife. This is really different. All those grudges, all those things that we had have to actually, not be part of our home life. And, the other thing that I would think would be a good idea is, people don't admit this, but I think that it's a very good idea for those people who work together to maybe go and have some marriage counselling or marriage coaching, at least once a year, so that you're not taking all of that stuff into your marriage or your personal relationship. We were talking about mediation, about the business, but I think your marriage also needs that, or your relative and you might need it as well, so that you can continue on and have a really good relationship outside of the workplace. Because if you're taking all those grudges and things from home, it's going to affect how you treat each other, your intimacy, how you go with your children, how you relate to other people as well. It'll affect your whole social life, everything. So it's important.
And don't think to yourself, we won't need to have that kind of counselling unless something bad happens and we start to resent each other. Let me tell you, it's very difficult to come back from resent. So get in early. Make sure that things never get to a point where you go, oh my God, our last hope is marriage counselling. Like, get in early and start having learning how to effectively communicate, as you say, compartmentalise. This is the work me, this is the home me. I interact in different ways. I communicate in different ways in both spaces. I have different levels of accountability in both spaces. I can get away with not making the bed at home, but I can't get away with not attending the staff meeting at work. And so I think getting those sort of helpful parameters in place from the very start is fantastic. So do recognise that when you've gone through weeks or months, or God help us, years, where things haven't been going 100%, you establish, and then they become quite ingrained, habits of communication and thought towards one another. And it's very difficult to come back from unhelpful thoughts if they've become quite ingrained.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is to also recognise that when you're in a business, and say you're a female, when you're in a business, you're taking a lot of action. A lot of action is based in the masculine. And if you're a female, when you step into the home, you need to step back into being feminine, because that's part of the gel of what keeps your marriage together as well. So it's important to realise all that action taking that you take in the workplace shouldn't be the same types of actions that you take at home. And like you said, resentment, they actually say that that's the death knell of a marriage, so don't get resentment.
Yeah, I heard a marriage counsellor say once, many, many years ago, if a couple comes to me angry with each other, I can deal with that, I can manage that. But if they come to me resentful of each other, it's gone past a point of no return. And I think having a plan B is a fantastic idea as well. Again, this can be arranged with a discussion with your lawyer, that even though it's also rosy at the very start, and we love each other up to the eyeballs at the very start, let's have a plan B so we know if everything turns to shit and we just simply cannot work together anymore, let's determine what the plan B is. Who is the one that's going to keep within the business? If it's the dentist, is one of the siblings or is one of the spouses. Of course, it makes perfect sense that they're the ones that will stay in situ in the business, and the other person will go off and do the plan B, whether it's going off and working at another practice somewhere or picking up their career if they had shifted career to come into and work in that dental practice. If it's two siblings and they're both dentists, then decide which one's going to stay on site and which one's going to go off. And it could be that you end up selling that on-site practice. You both get 50% of the sale price and go off on your own and develop your own practices elsewhere and separately. But develop a plan B. Otherwise, that will end up becoming the thing that everyone's fear and resisting if things should turn bad. And you'll hang on to this dysfunctional space for much longer because nobody knows what to do, what the other options are going to be out there.
One of the practices that I worked in, they were a husband and wife team, but she wasn't on site. She was a practice manager somewhere else. And she stepped foot only a couple of times into the practice, and that was to have yearly meetings and also to have growth meetings as well. And she trusted me as the manager to do the job and do it well. And I think that was just an amazing place to work, because he was in his domain within his practice and she managed somewhere else, and she was really happy and he was really happy, and the team within that practice were pretty happy. So that was a really good dynamic.
Nice.
And a good way to sort it out so that they both could continue doing what they loved, but maybe not in the same place. I'm not sure why they did that, but that was how it was when I joined that practice. So.
Yeah, it's very good, isn't it? I mean, I think the term practice manager means so many different things to different practices. You know, you've got the extreme end of a practice manager where they really do run the whole business. They're setting out budgets for expenditure. They're in charge of all the key performance indicators and tracking all of that and assessing those figures, marketing campaigns and strategic approaches to patient management. They're in charge of everything, team training, the whole bit, hiring and firing, paying everybody. Crikey, there's so many things on that list. But I think we can, especially now when we've had so much remote working going on and seeing how it can work, that the remote, because it ends up being more like the remote business operations manager, that can be off-site, that role. Maybe the team and the patient manager, operations manager, is the one that's on-site, making sure that they're nurturing all the relationships, having the effective communication, picking up problems before they get too big.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that could work quite well.
Lovely. Well, Meg, this has been a really interesting discussion. I'm so pleased you raised it as a topic, and I think it's such a common occurrence in the dental practice industry. So many people are related in these places. And certainly I've seen, you know, we both worked, as we said, you know, we both worked at a practice where there was a husband and wife team owning that one, and I think they managed it very, very well. They didn't bring in their issues from outside. If they had any, I have no idea if they did. Everybody has issues at some point, don't they? And they also had a deep respect for the role each of them were playing within the practice itself as well, which is another key thing. And I think it can work very, very well. You've just got to be very aware of the pitfalls and put plans in place to make sure you can manoeuvre around those.
I think so too. I think that's a great way of doing it.
Well, hopefully you'll come back again very soon, Meggie, and we can talk about something else interesting. I would love that. Thank you so much for that, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you also enjoy learning and discovering new ways of helping your dental team and practice be more successful and for your dental patients to have a greater experience, then you should check out The Club. The club members receive weekly lunch and learns covering a whole range of different topics, all designed to help you be better. Go to the website julieparkerpracticesuccess.com.au. Click on The Club and you will be able to discover more about it. I encourage you to take advantage of the 14-day free trial. That way you get to experience the club and see if it's right for you and your practice. I hope to see you there.